a drunken cowboy's hateful shout puts the target on Neshka's back, but when she rides into the desert to reclaim her freedom, she finds an unexpected ally and a fight that will change everything. The sun had barely climbed over the San Pedro ridges when the first wagons rattled into Dustwind Crossing. The town was little more than a cluster of warped buildings leaning into the desert like tired men after a long ride. The wind carried the dry sting of sand across the faces of the newcomers, but their boots kept moving. Dustwind Crossing had always been a place for the desperate, the dreamers, and the damned. And on that morning, a poster hung crooked on the front of Brill's trading post, fluttering with a slogan that made even the hungriest drifter stop. "Buy a cowboy, get a working Apache woman for free," shouted the former love emotional. It wasn't a real advertisement. It wasn't an offer. It was a line screamed the night before by a heartbroken man, overheard by half the town. A bitter outburst, a drunken roar of pain, twisted into rumor by morning. And like all things in Dustwind Crossing, once a rumor took root, it grew teeth. Jesse Calder heard the story before he even tied up his horse. A lean, dust-coated cowboy who had seen more years on the trail than he cared to count. Jesse had come in only for a sack of beans, a jug of water, and maybe a night where the desert didn't howl through every bone in his body. But those words so ugly, recklessly hung in the street like a storm cloud waiting to crack open. "Former love, they say," muttered an old woman sweeping the wooden steps of the post office. "All that pain makes men stupid. Makes 'em cruel too." Jesse had no idea who the man was, nor did he care until he stepped into Brill's trading post and saw her. A woman with straight black hair falling past her shoulders, eyes sharp as obsidian, stood rigid near the counter. Her wrists were free, but her posture said she knew how quickly that could change. It was the posture of someone who had learned to stay ready. She held the gaze of every man in the room, not shrinking, not bowing. Watching. Measuring. Brill himself, thick-bodied and nervous, muttered as he counted the cans stacked behind him. "It ain't what folks think," he grumbled. Rafe was drunk. He didn't mean her. But the woman's eyes cut sideways toward Jesse. Brill said her name was Neshka, though he said it the way a man repeated a word he didn't understand. Jesse dipped his head respectfully. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "What's her story?" Jesse asked quietly. Brill leaned closer. "Belonged to one of Rafe Daughtry's crews. They weren't well. Rafe was sweet on her once, or thought he was. She left. Walked right out after telling him what kind of man he really was. Stirred him up real bad. Last night he raised hell about it. Hollered that fool line in front of 30 people. Now everyone thinks, oh well. You heard the gossip." Jesse felt something cold settle in his gut. He didn't like the way the men in the room stared at her. Didn't like the way they whispered. Deserts made people cruel, but this kind of cruelty felt deliberate, calculated and meant to break someone's dignity. Neshka stood still, but her eyes caught everything, the stairs, the weapons, the windows. Jesse recognized the look of someone already forming her escape plan. He'd seen that look before. He'd worn it himself the first time he ran from the violence of his own father. Brill lowered his voice. "Rafe's coming back for her. Claims she owes him something." Brill's jaw tightened. "I don't think she does." Jesse didn't either. When he finally bought his supplies and stepped back outside, he found 3 of Rafe Daughtry's men stepping off their horses. Broad shoulders, cheap whiskey on their breath, and hands too close to their guns. "Morning," Jesse called, trying to move past. "Hold up." The tallest one blocked his path. "You seen our Apache girl in there?" "Neshka. Rafe wants her returned." Jesse's jaw flexed. "She ain't mine to talk about." "She ain't nobody's," the man sneered. "Except Rafe's. She ran off, and we're here to collect." The second man grinned. Word is she left because she was sweet on someone else. Some cowboy. His eyes narrowed. Imagine that. A woman like her throwing away Rafe for some trail rat? He laughed. Jessie didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Ain't my business who she throws away. A pause. Then the first man leaned in. If you see her leave with anyone, you let us know. Rafe's got a claim. No, Jessie said simply. The man frowned. No? Number. I don't work for men who claim people. The tension snapped taut as a tripwire. Hands drifted toward guns. But before the situation could rupture into blood, Brill burst out of the door with a barrel of potatoes and nearly tripped over his own boots. The distraction was enough. Jessie walked off without looking back. He didn't get far before he heard a soft voice behind him. You shouldn't have spoken to them, Neshka said. Jessie turned. She'd followed him out Sidia quiet as a shadow, light on her feet. Her eyes held neither gratitude nor fear, only wary calculation. I didn't say anything worth trouble, he said. You said I know. They don't like that. She stepped closer. Rafe doesn't like that. Jessie nodded once. Well, he and I weren't gonna get along anyway. She studied him for several long seconds, as if trying to read the years of dust on his face. You're passing through. Was planning to. You should keep going, she said. Today. Jessie tilted his head. You're planning to run. I'm planning not to belong to any man, she replied, voice steady. Rafe thinks what he feels is love. It's sickness. He wants ownership, not partnership. When he shouts that awful line, it isn't about me. It's about telling the town I am less than human. She drew a slow breath. I won't stay somewhere that listens. Jessie admired her clarity. Her courage. She spoke like someone who had watched too many people try to define her and decided she would define herself instead. Where you headed? He asked. North. Toward the pines. A pause. My aunt lives near the White Mountain foothills. She will take me in. That's a long ride alone. I've ridden farther. Jessie didn't doubt it. But he still imagined Rafe's men chasing her across the desert, guns raised, pride wounded. Pride was the most dangerous thing west of the Mississippi. More men had been killed by pride than by bullets. You want company? Jessie asked. Her eyes sharpened. Why? Because Rafe's not gonna stop. Because you got 3 men already hunting you. And because traveling alone through Badwater Ridge ain't wise for anybody. She held his gaze for a long time. The wind blew a strand of hair across her cheek, and she tucked it behind her ear. You ride quiet? She asked. Mostly. You talk too much? Not unless it's important. Another long pause. Then she nodded. You can ride with me. Until the foothills. Jessie tipped his hat. They left before noon. The desert stretched open like a great, sun-bleached sea. Their horses moved at a steady pace, hooves crunching dry grass and cracked soil. Hours passed with little conversation. Neshka navigated by landmarks Jessie barely noticed rock shapes, rigger lines, distant silhouettes of abandoned mining posts. She knew the land better than any map. By dusk, they were miles from town. They made camp beside a cluster of mesquite trees. Jessie lit a small fire. Neshka brewed a tea using herbs she carried in a small pouch. The scent rose warm and earthy in the cool night air. You rode with a ranch once, she said abruptly. How do you know? You hold your reins like someone who broke horses young. And you listen for things most men ignore. Well, you read me easy. She shook her head. Reading people is how I survived Rafe. Jessie looked up. What was he to you? She stared into the fire. A man who pretended tenderness but worshipped control. He listened when I spoke of the old stories, the land, my family. He said he admired us. But admiration turns to hunger in men like him. He wanted possession. And the moment I refused, he called me ungrateful, difficult, unreasonable. Her jaw tightened. And when I walked away, he shouted that line. Buy a cowboy, get a working Apache woman for free, Jesse murmured, disgust twisting his stomach. A curse dressed as a joke, she said. A humiliation meant for me. A warning meant for anyone who might help me. Jesse let silence settle for a while before saying, he's wrong about you. Neshka nodded once. Yes. He is. They rode again before dawn. By midday, Jesse spotted something on the horizon, a dust clouds, moving fast. Riders, he warned. Neshka didn't turn her head. I know. I heard their horses half an hour ago. They're pushing hard. They will catch us if we stay in the open. Jesse scanned the terrain. There's a canyon notch to the west. We can lose AM in the rocks. She guided her horse without hesitation. The chase lasted hours. Rafe's men gained ground, firing warning shots that cracked through the hot air. Jesse and Neshka wove through narrow gullies, ducked under jutting boulders, and let the terrain swallow their tracks. At one point a bullet sparked off stone inches from Jesse's boot. But Neshka was always one move ahead as she led them through switchbacks that no sane cowboy would attempt. By dusk they had shaken the pursuit. They camped again in a narrow ravine, safe from sight. Jesse cleaned his gun. Neshka washed dust from her hands in a shallow spring. You ever think of staying put somewhere? She asked him suddenly. Sometimes. And? He shrugged. Ain't found the right reason to. She considered his answer. Most men chase freedom because they don't know what they'd do with peace. Jesse smiled faintly. And you? You chasing peace? I'm chasing the right to choose my own life. That is peace enough. The next morning they reached a small abandoned ranch house. Its roof sagged, but the well still worked. They rested, letting the horses drink deeply. Inside the house Jesse found the remnants of a life long gone, a child's toy horse, a cracked window, a faded quilt. Neshka walked the room silently. What do you see? He asked. People who left before the land took them. She touched the window frame. Many never get the chance. Jesse understood. Life out here could disappear in a heartbeat. They left the ranch and continued north. On the fourth day, the landscape began to change. Shrubs gave way to taller grasses. The air cooled. Pine scent drifted from far-off hills. We're close, Neshka said softly. Jesse felt a strange weight in his chest, something between relief and loss. He also sensed something else. They're behind us again, he murmured. Neshka closed her eyes briefly. Yes. Rafe's men hadn't given up. They caught up near a narrow creek cutting across the trail. 4 riders this time, not 3. And at their front was Rafe Daughtry himself, a broad-shouldered, red-eyed, riding like a man possessed. Neshka! He bellowed. She did not flinch. Rafe pulled his horse to a stop 30 feet away. Jesse positioned himself slightly forward, hand resting on his revolver. Come back, Rafe demanded. You made your point. Enough running. Neshka's voice was calm. I am not yours. You were, he snapped. You could be again if you'd stop this foolishness. I was never yours, she said. Not even for an hour. Rafe's face twisted. Then why'd you stay with me? Because you pretended to understand me, she replied. Until you didn't. Rafe glared at Jesse. This him? The cowboy you ran off with? Jesse laughed dryly. We met yesterday. Rafe's men shifted uneasily. Rafe spat. This ain't about him. It's about you, Neshka. You humiliated me. You made me look small. You made yourself small, she said. All I did was walk away. The honesty of that sentence struck Rafe like a fist. His hand twitched toward his gun. Jesse stepped forward. You draw on her, and you're dead before you clear leather. You think you can take me, cowboy? I know I can. The men watched, unsure. A leader choosing violence sometimes went home in a boxer. Loyalty had its limits. Rafe's fury trembled visibly. Neshka rode forward exactly one step. Rafe, daughtry, she said, voice carrying across the clearing, I release you from whatever story you told yourself about us. I am no longer in it. Ride away. Live whatever life you still have. Rafe's throat bobbed. Something broke behind his eyes. Pride. Despair. Maybe both. Fine, he rasped. Go run to your mountain folk. But don't come back to my territory. I never will, she said. He wheeled his horse around. His men hesitated, but ultimately followed. The desert swallowed their retreat until nothing but dust remained. Neshka let out a breath so deep it felt like she'd been holding it for years. You handled that, Jesse said quietly. Yes, she replied. But your presence helped. Glad to be useful. She turned to him fully. You were more than useful. They rode the final miles in silence until the first cabins of the foothill settlement appeared. Smoke drifted from chimneys. Children played near a small corral. A woman, a grey hair, strong posture, stepped outside and froze when she saw Neshka. Aunt Kiana. Neshka called. The woman ran to her, embracing her tightly. Jesse stepped back, giving them space. When they pulled apart, Kiana studied Jesse. Friend? Traveling companion, Neshka said. Jesse nodded. She didn't need much help. Just someone to watch her back. Kiana smiled knowingly. She always did choose her allies wisely. Neshka looked at him then longer than before. Softer. You'll stay for supper? She asked. Jesse scratched the back of his neck. Reckon I could. They ate under the pine trees. Warm stew, soft bread, fresh water. The simplest meal Jesse had tasted in years, yet somehow it felt like the richest. Afterward, as the stars emerged above the ridge, Neshka walked with him to where his horse waited. This is where we part, she said gently. Seems that way. You helped me reach a place where no one will shout ugly things and make them truth. Jesse looked into her steady, luminous eyes. You reached it yourself. I just rode alongside. She smiled a small, real smile. The first he'd seen from her. Where will you go now? She asked. Wherever the trail opens. She studied him. Maybe one day it will open back this direction. Maybe, he murmured. She placed a hand briefly over his. Be well, Jesse called her. You too, Neshka. He mounted up. She watched as he rode off, the pines fading behind him, the mountains glowing faintly in moonlight. The desert lay wide, uncertain, unforgiving. But for the first time in a long while, Jesse felt the faint outline of a future taking shape. Not a destination, just a direction. A reason to keep riding. Behind him, in a foothill settlement protected by trees and family, a woman named Neshka began a new life of her own, one chosen freely, lived boldly, and defended fiercely. And somewhere far to the south, a man named Rafe Daughtery sat in a saloon trying to swallow the bitterness of defeat, slowly learning that love could never be owned, bought, traded, or shouted into obedience. And no matter how far the rumor of his drunken cry traveled across the desert, its meaning would fade. Because the truth had already outridden it. In the West, the land remembered strength, not cruelty. Freedom, not possession. Voices, not rumors. and two riders who crossed paths for only a handful of days would carry that truth in their quiet footsteps across the endless sand,